Is George Pickens maybe the best dynasty value right now in your redraft and your rookie drafts? We'll dive in more on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallBlast. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Marcus Mosher. You could give him a follow at Marcus_Mosher. And of course, follow the show. Follow us wherever you listen to your fantasy football podcast. Hit that subscribe button over on the YouTubes. Never miss a awesome opportunity to improve your dynasty team. Marcus, happy Monday. Another week in the book without football. I'm very empty and sad, but we're going to be talking about some George Pickens today. We're going to do a little mock draft Monday.
We've got combine coming up, though. That's a good thing. This is one of my favorite times of the year because now we get to overreact to all these 40 times and broad jumps and stuff. And it's always a blast on Twitter. So it's one of my favorite times. And we've got free agency coming up later in the month, right? We've got some trades that I'm sure are going to be happening. It's going to be a busy time to be a football fan. But yes, you mentioned it. George Pickens, he is the star of today's show. But will he be a star in the NFL? That is a segue, Kate. Let me ask you this. What did you think about George Pickens when you watched him on tape over the weekend?
Gosh, Marcus, I was really hoping you would lead in with
all
what
right.
you
would
think
you like
about
me
George
to?
Pickens. No, you know what? So George Pickens, wide receiver, Georgia, former 4-star recruit, 6'3", 200 pounds, breakout age delight. Broke out as a true freshman, had 49 catches, 727 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. What a start, man. What a start. And then, boom. I don't know what else to make of George Pickens. Sophomore season, disappointing. Hasn't been perfectly healthy. Tore his ACL in March of last season. So only played one total game as a junior here. We don't have the best sample size. I don't know what to make of George Pickens. Can you start us off on that conversation? Because I'm at a bit of a loss.
So, yeah, this one's really tricky because I remember in 2019, at the end of that season, he finished the year really strong. He scored a touchdown in 4 straight games, played well against A&M, scored a touchdown against LSU. That's the LSU team that won the national championship. Had a long touchdown against Georgia Tech. And then in the bowl game that Georgia had against Baylor, he got 12 passes for 175 yards and a touchdown as a true freshman. And I remember thinking at the time, holy cow, this guy is going to be like a top 5 overall pick. Like, this is one of the best receiving prospects that we've ever seen, right? I mean, he was just getting open at will. And then the 2020 season came, and there were some rumors about him potentially opting out after that really good start. He didn't. He came back, and he had an okay year. He had 513 yards and 6 touchdowns in 8 games. Part of that is because the quarterback play just wasn't very good, right? They were rotating between JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett. He did finish the season really strong. 5 catches for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns against Missouri in the final game of the regular season. 7 catches for 135 yards and a touchdown against Cincinnati in the bowl game. And remember, that's against 2 corners that are going to go in the NFL, going to be high picks in the NFL draft, and Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. And then he tears his ACL this offseason. And you think he's done. He's probably not coming back, but he does. He somehow makes it back in like 6 months, plays a couple games, doesn't look like quite the same player. And now we have to project, is he closer to what we saw at the end of 2019 and the end of 2020? Or did he kind of peak already in college? I don't know if I have that answer, Kate.
And I think it's kind of an interesting, I don't know if you can provide any insight here. I think it's an interesting move for George Pickens to decide to come out this year.
Well,
I
I don't know if it was
provide
all
some
that tough.
insight there.
I mean, you look at the quarterback play there. It's going to be probably the same guy next year, Stetson Bennett, right? And I just don't think in that offense they're going to throw him the ball a lot. So you might as well come out now as a 21-year-old, even if you go in the third or fourth round, which we'll get to in a second. At least get that first year under your belt in the NFL and try to make it to the second contract. But I just don't know if Georgia was going to develop him any further. That's all.
I think that's fair. You mentioned the draft stock. He is currently by PFF projected to go in the third round. So not super high. They have him ranked as their number 12 wide receiver on their big board. I think it's just so interesting because I do think this is a guy that he has ability to create space. I think he's got, the technical skills available to him that could make him a big time asset in terms of his route running at the NFL level. But again, we just haven't had the opportunity to at least see this development as he ages and progresses through his collegiate career. So he could be a value at this point. You hinted it before.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at Todd McShay, and we know some of the big draft media people like McShay and Kuiper. They tend to rank players based off how the NFL sees them and not necessarily how they see them. He has George Pickens as wide receiver 16, the 108th player overall. So you're talking about a borderline day 2 pick. And I understand. I just wanted to ask you, as a player, what did you think about his skill set? Because you mentioned his size, 6'3", 200. Are you worried about the lack of speed? He's not slow, but he's not a burner either.
I do worry about the lack of speed because it's something that if we don't see refinement in some of the other areas of his game, which again, he got off to such a hot start in his collegiate career, but we didn't get to see the progression of that skill set. The ability to create separation, like I said, sets him apart. But did he really get to, further develop that skill? No. He had, the lower body injury in one of the most crucial seasons of his career didn't help. I don't know what to make of George Pickens because I do worry about that lack of speed if we don't get to see the development of the other areas of his game. I like his ability to, track a ball. I like the big playability, but I think the big playability after the point of the catch, if you're just relying on the speed, isn't quite there.
I want to keep talking about George Pickens, but before we get to where we think he might land and all that kind of stuff, I want to tell you guys about Built Bar. This time of year, almost everybody has given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not us. And that's because we are sticking to eating better due to Built Bar. Built Bars are low calories, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these and you'll live a much better life. Most Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has like 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. The other good thing about Built Bars, they just taste so good. They have so many great flavors, including mint brownie, coconut almond, and the new flavor this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious, and Built Bars always coming out with new flavors. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, a couple of things just to finish up on George Pickens here. I kind of get the sense that he's probably not going to run a 40 at the combine. He might not even work out because he still is less than a year removed from that ACL injury. If he doesn't run a 40 at all during this draft process, does that make you nervous?
Given the injury, no. I kind of didn't expect to see him run the 40. Obviously, we did get to see him have some playing time here following the injury, but testing out, I think, is a little bit of a riskier game because there's really not a ton of upside there unless he's been knocking it out of the park in his own trials, then there's really no reason to, put that data out there. Better to leave things up to speculation. So I'm not going to hold that against him.
All right, so I saw on NFL Draft Scout they project him at like a 4.54 40-yard dash, which is fine. Like if that's what he ran, I wouldn't blink, right? That's a great time. I want to ask you about some comparisons here before we talk about landing spot. So I think in terms of like the way that he plays, where he's an outside receiver, like it's pretty clearly he's an outside receiver. He wins not by speed, but just by really good timing. He's really good at tracking the ball. He can win outside the framework of his body. Does like a Michael Gallup comp make a little bit of sense to you?
Oh, I like that. That wasn't a comp on my list here, but I do kind of I like that. And the interesting prospect here is the fact that we have Michael Gallup now coming off of a torn ACL. So I'm just saying that's kind of perfect here, Marcus. I do think that's interesting, but I think Michael Gallup is a guy that we've seen such like fantastic technical refinement. And I think
Sure.
that's what sets Michael Gallup apart, for me at least, is he does so many of the small things so proficiently well. His understanding of where he's at on the field, his ability to keep his tippy toes in on some of these sideline catches, like those are where I think Michael Gallup wins for me, over George Pickens. But again, could George Pickens have that? Possibly. Just it's a dart throw.
All right, I want to talk about where he's going to probably go in the draft. My guess, Kate, is third round at some point, right? Because there's just not a lot of guys that with his kind of production when he plays in a big school like that and that have his size. So if you look at some other receivers recently that were drafted in the third round, let's just kind of compare them. Like, for example, Brian Edwards, another SEC receiver, didn't have amazing stats, but fairly productive in a run-first offense. Do you think like Pickens has more upside than a Brian Edwards? Because I do.
I do, and I think it comes down to, again, those question marks at health. That could be an NFL team's opportunity to get him at a discount. And I mean, the fact that he is projected to go in the third round, that really opens up the entire draft board. Because I mean, obviously the third round, we've got plenty of compensatory picks, but I mean, that does put some of these more competitive teams in the mix to draft a wide receiver. We've talked about his lack of speed. So something that I think would be kind of interesting is to pair him with an offense that already has that they aren't looking for that. What about Kansas City? They have 2 third-round picks, both towards the end of the third round. They pick at 94 and 102 as a compensatory selection. They already have the speed in Tyreek Hill. They've already got that part locked up on their game. So, put George Pickens on the outside and allow him to be a solid wide receiver too. I think that could be an interesting fit.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something here. He's probably going to go to a team where he's not going to be asked to be the number 1 or probably not even the number 2 receiver right away. And that's going to scare some dynasty owners, right? Because they're just going to look, hey, the path to targets is pretty crowded. But I actually think going to a team like that with an established quarterback makes a lot of sense. I think the Chiefs are a good option. The Chargers are a good option if Mike Williams leaves, right? Buffalo. If Buffalo wants an outside receiver, that can be a little bit more of a contested catch guy. I think those are all good spots. And listen, third round makes a lot of sense. I just keep coming back to it. When I saw him at his peak in 2019 and 2020, I thought this was a first round receiver. And if you compare that to the receivers that typically go in the third round, I just think he's got a much higher ceiling, right? Last year, Josh Palmer was a third round pick, Diami Brown, Amari Rodgers, Nico Collins, Anthony Schwartz. Like if he goes in that range, I think he's going to be a huge value in rookie drafts. I really do.
I think so as well. And actually, you hit on the next name that I wanted to bring up, Anthony Schwartz, another guy that we still have some time left to see if he's going to turn into anything for the Cleveland Browns.
Yep.
But talk about speed. He ran a 4.27 at his pro day. What do you think about potentially sending him to Cleveland,
Yes.
where, obviously there are still questions about their plans at quarterback? Jarvis Landry leaves a potential opening there in the slot. But if they're planning to rebuild this wide receiver room, maybe, pairing him up with Anthony Schwartz, Donovan Peoples-Jones could get him in an interesting position where he might see some opportunity there.
And the good thing is that offense does have a lot of speed if they move on from Jarvis, right? Because Donovan Peoples-Jones and Schwartz are really fast. I believe that David Njoku is going to come back, and he's one of the most athletic tight ends in the league. So they probably could use that bigger guy that profiles as an X receiver in the NFL. I think that makes a ton of sense. I will say where Pickens lands in terms of like the team is probably going to really change his dynasty value, like short term. But long term, I think no matter where he goes, I do think he's a value, because if you're looking like at Dynasty League football right now, he's really, really fallen in the rankings. I went back and I looked at like after the 2019 season where people were valuing George Pickens and Devy leagues, and he was the number one receiver in this class. And now you're looking at him as wide receiver 7. I just think that's a value.
That's fair.
Okay. We watched Drake London. We watched Treylon Burks. I think it's clear that both of those guys are better prospects than George Pickens, correct?
Absolutely. More refined, better sample size for us to judge him on. So it definitely, I mean, George Pickens, you are betting on the ceiling here, and you're betting on, sort of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Stranger Things, like the Upside Down.
Of course, yes.
What would have happened in the Upside Down if George Pickens were to stay healthy, if he would have had a normal 2020 season? Bet on his upside in the Upside Down. That's what I think you need to bet on George Pickens as, because I think the ceiling's reasonably high, but he needs the right situation. He needs the right opportunity in order to flourish, and we'll see if he gets that.
I truly believe if he doesn't tear his ACL and he just has even an average season, he's still probably a first-round pick in this class. But just because of the injury, because he didn't play a ton, and the 2020 season was weird with COVID and he didn't have a great start, there's a lot of questions now. And I think a team sometime on day 2 is going to be very, very happy with the receiver they get there. All right, let's take one more quick break so I can tell you guys about BetOnline. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam with both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Kate, it's a mock draft Monday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and we've got a new one that we need to talk about. And I believe this one is coming from our guy, Eric Crocker, from Locked On the NFL Draft and Locked On 49ers. We're not going to go through the whole draft, but I want to just pick out a couple guys that landed in unique spots and get your thoughts on them. The first is at pick number 9, the Denver Broncos selecting Matt Corral, quarterback from Ole Miss. Do you like that fit?
So I think I've said this on this podcast before. I'm not going to trust the Denver Broncos to draft and develop a quarterback at this point. I would prefer to see them go after one of these, veteran, guys on the trading block who we know are established. We know what you're going to get. I'd much prefer for them to see that, because I don't think Matt Corral is good enough to lift this team up on his own.
I agree.
I'm not a big fan. I'd rather send that pick to a potential trade suitor myself.
I agree. If it's not for Aaron Rodgers, go out and get Russell Wilson. You're going to hate this. Go out and get Derek Carr. The Raiders would probably never trade him within the division, but that's one I like. All right, let's keep going. At number 10, Treylon Burks to the Jets. Gotta say, Kate, I don't love this fit.
Okay, tell me why. We've watched the tape on Treylon Burks. We like him as a wide receiver.
We do like him a lot. I think he's best as a guy that can move inside, outside, right? And I would like to see him on a creative offense that can get him touches in the backfield, on screens, and all that kind of stuff. But they already have Elijah Moore. Right? I feel like they need a true X receiver that can win consistently with route running, and that's just not Burks' game. He's more of a gadget player than a refined receiver at this point. And I feel like the Jets just need somebody that's a little bit more technically sound.
That's fair.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. This one is very interesting. At number 11, the Washington Commanders select Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson, one of my favorite wide receivers in this class.
Mine too.
Started off the season very hot in this 2021 season. 4 straight games of at least 100 receiving yards. Just he's an absolute dominant beast. I really like this, and I like this opportunity. My only question mark comes down to, what are you doing at quarterback? Is Garrett Wilson a wide receiver that you think is strong enough to stand on his own without an established quarterback?
And maybe the point for Washington is we don't love any quarterbacks in this year's class, and we're not sure that we can go out and trade for one. So if we get Garrett Wilson and we combine him with Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, if he ever plays, Logan Thomas, and Antonio Gibson, maybe we're really appealing to a quarterback next year because we have all the weapons and we've got a good offensive line, or at least an offensive line that's building. Maybe that's the play, because otherwise it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you do have Terry McLaurin heading free agency in 2023. So, if you're even planning to move on from Terry McLaurin, I don't know, you're just swapping out one Ohio State receiver for another. That's my thought.
I don't like that, though. I want both those guys to play together.
I want both of them too, Marcus, but I'm just saying.
I actually think on the field fit, those two guys would make so much sense, right? McLaurin is the speedster that makes plays down the field. Wilson's the guy that can make plays after the catch. That's a really good fit. All right, moving on. Talk about a perfect fit. Jameson Williams, the absolute burner from Alabama, going to the Chargers at pick 17. Now, he might not be ready for week 1, but that's okay. This is a long-term pick, and my gosh, that fit is perfect.
I absolutely love this. If the Chargers are planning to let Mike Williams walk in free agency, this is an opportunity for you to snag another, like you said, the speed there, the ability, the athleticism. You are getting all of that, and I think you're getting Jameson Williams at a bit of a discount comparatively, just because of the injury, the unfortunate timing of his injury has, I think, gotten the Chargers a big steal here.
And I mean, even if, let's say you bring back Mike Williams on a 2-year deal worth, I don't know, $35 million. This is a good way to,
bridge the gap.
Have somebody waiting in the wings. We know Mike Williams isn't the most durable receiver in the world. They also drafted Josh Palmer last year. Palmer's not really a speed guy, but really good, in the middle of the field. I think he would make a lot of sense. I love this fit. All right, couple more. Your Steelers take Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty.
I think this would be the least, probably the least shocking pick of anybody. This is the worst kept secret in the NFL among draft scouts. Everything. The Steelers are eyeing Malik Willis. I love the fit, but I do think that if the Steelers take Malik Willis in the first round, they've got to get themselves a veteran quarterback, like we've said, potentially Marcus Mariota, Mitch Trubisky, a guy that can, I think, give you semblances of that mobility that you're going to get with Malik Willis, but give Malik Willis time to develop. Don't throw him into the ring of
I agree.
fire just yet.
All right, 3 more, and I just want you to tell me your favorite of the fits. Crystal Olave to Tampa Bay at pick 27, Jahan Dotson, wide receiver from Penn State, going to Green Bay at pick 28, or Drake London, wide receiver from USC, going to the Dolphins at pick 29.
Drake London, Miami Dolphins, number 29. I think I love this fit from just a NFL standpoint. I think this would be such a smart pick by this team. Give Jalen Waddle, obviously you've got the speed with Jalen Waddle. You've got ability after the catch. I think Drake London is just this perfect big bodied possession receiver that just helps the development of your quarterback. If you're going to commit to Tua, give him all the weapons that you can. And I think Drake London is the perfect weapon to be able to do that. They haven't solidified their run game. I think this is the perfect move to raise the ceiling of your quarterback, but also raise the floor, which could be more important.
Yeah, I think Miami's got to build their offensive line, but at that point in the draft, it's just too good of a value to pass up. Right now, they would still have Devontae Parker for 1 more year. They have Preston Williams, so they have some size, but London, with his size and his blocking ability, which Mike McDaniel talks about a lot, and the receivers have to be able to block. Drake London can do that. That would be a fun offense, Kate.
Yeah, I think this could be a really interesting fit. I'd like to see it. And I think from the standpoint of, like you said, the value, I don't think there's any better value here among any of these wide receivers than Drake London, because I think you know what you're getting, and you're getting a big body, just dominant and reliable wide receiver.
I agree. It's a fantastic pick there. All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download the show wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Matt and Ryan will be back on Tuesday and Wednesday. Kate, you and I will be back on Friday. And the good thing about that is we're going to have some combine stuff to talk about. Quarterbacks and wide receivers test on Thursday night. So maybe we can get into the weeds on some of those combine numbers. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that. Have a great week. We'll see you guys next time.